All right, welcome back to another episode of the Healthy and Whole podcast. Today, we're going to be jumping into a topic that is a bit of a sensitive topic, and that is the topic of GLP-1 medications, how they're being used. And really, the reason I wanted to jump into this today is to give a more nuanced perspective from an actual sustainable weight loss coach, and to give a few words of caution to some of the fears that I have around these medications and some of the other products that are popping up around them in this whole industry that has popped up. So I want to start off, before I even really dive into everything I have to talk about here, I want to start off by saying that I am not, as a sustainable weight loss coach, I am not against fervently the use of any medication, just like I am not against the use of SSRIs and things like that when we're working on something like depression or anxiety. I'm not against the use of things like GLP-1s across the board, with a caveat, meaning that just like I am not so much for the use of SSRIs and things like that as a sole tool against depression and anxiety, I don't love the idea of using GLP-1 medications like Ozempic or Wegovy or Trulicity or Victoza, there's a bunch of them on the market, as the sole measure to fight, to achieve weight loss, to work on type 2 diabetes and things like that. Just like with depression, there are a number of lifestyle related factors that lead to and contribute to depression and anxiety. And solely relying on medications, while that can be very helpful to get someone feeling better and functional and helping, especially in times where they're acutely very depressed, if we don't do some of that deeper work mentally, emotionally, then we're just always going to be reliant on that medication. And the same thing I think applies here, in that I think we want to really rely on some root cause measures so that we're not reliant on the medication. But we'll get into that more and to some of the real problems and the concerns that I have. But I just wanted to get that out of the way. I'm not coming out as a hardliner against use of GLP-1s. But I do think we need to have a very nuanced conversation around how they should be used, if they're going to be used, and some of the really big pitfalls that I see happening that I think in the coming months and years are going to be really ugly if we don't clue some folks into what's happening. All right. So first of all, and I'm not going to go super deep into this because there are a bazillion other podcasts that will go really deep into the science, but I just thought I'd do a quick explanation around GLP-1 and where all this came from. First of all, GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide, is a peptide that our bodies produce this, and it's been utilized for many, many years, if not decades, even in the medical community for a lot of things completely unrelated to weight loss or management of type 2 diabetes, and a lot of the things that the industry is really utilizing them for now. And so it's only been more recently that GLP-1 in the last few years has been sort of co-opted to be utilized for weight loss and management of type 2 diabetes and some things like that. But there are a long list of very positive benefits that come from GLP-1, and that's why our bodies produce it. There are neuroregenerative, cardio-regenerative, a bunch of regenerative and anti-inflammatory impacts and uses that are really, really good that come from GLP-1. But like I said, in recent years, it sort of has become known that there are also mechanisms and impacts from higher doses of GLP-1 that can assist in appetite control and things like that, and that when we dose up, we can achieve weight loss. So I want to dive into that a little bit, and then I'm gonna dive into the real problems that I'm seeing. So essentially, we now have a whole industry that has kind of cropped up. You have your heavy hitters from the pharmaceutical world, like Ozempic, Wegovy, Trulicity, Victoza, a bunch of these that are essentially injections that you take. And then you also now even have another layer of products popping up in the non-injection, but the oral, like the supplement industry, as well as some of these products or companies are coming out with products that are intended to increase your natural production of GLP-1 and all that stuff. And I'm not even going to get into any of that. I'm mainly going to be focusing on the pharmaceutical grade dosages and the way it's being used right now in the actual weight loss industry and type 2 diabetes. Okay. So the main thing that has happened here is the medical community has come around to the fact that when we really dose up with semaglutide, GLP-1, when we really dose up, there are mechanisms that get really fired up, cranked to 10 for slowing gastric emptying, meaning like the rate at which your stomach empties after you eat and consume food. And then also suppression of appetite, among other things. And it increases the release of insulin and decreases the release of sugar from the liver, a bunch of different things that happen that are, in theory, not necessarily bad for metabolic health and losing weight and stuff like that. The problem is with the advent of using it like this, what seems to be happening is the dosages are just really, really high. Even the starting dosages are kind of like saying, okay, we're going to just really crank these natural mechanisms that happen with GLP-1, but we're going to crank them all the way to 10. So we go from having someone who really struggles with being hungry all the time, over-consuming foods, emotional eating, maybe even binge eating, stress eating, boredom eating, all of those behavioral issues around food. And we're going to really dose this up, and we're going to slow gastric emptying, and we're going to crush appetite, just squash it. And now all of a sudden, this person who was really struggling to get any traction with weight loss because of their relationship with food, mental, emotional relationship with food, lack of education, lack of activity, all those different things combined, now all of a sudden they're able to have such a low appetite and such a shift in their gastric emptying and different things like that, that they literally cannot consume the volume of food necessary to gain weight, and it squashed so much that many of them start losing weight at a very rapid rate because they simply cannot eat the volume of food they used to be, due to both the slowing of the gastric emptying and a complete squashing of their appetite. And so that's where rapid weight loss often starts to occur in these situations, even with folks who, without the medication, were really struggling to get any traction with weight loss whatsoever. Okay. And so mechanistically, it's really not that far off from the way that gastric bypass approaches this, right? Gastric bypass surgery is essentially taking the volume capacity of a person's stomach and shrinking it down to be very small so that there is a huge restriction on the volume of food that can be consumed. And it basically just takes the capacity and makes it super small so that it sort of foolproofs or fail-proofs a person's ability to abuse food, right? Or to eat too much and so therefore you get rapid weight loss, you get rapid correction of blood sugars, and in many cases, a rapid reversal of type 2 diabetes, lowering of A1C and all of that stuff. It's really The only difference is that one is doing that via surgery and one is doing that via just biological mechanisms through a medication. But the outcome is the same. The total volume of food that a person feels capable of consuming and has a desire to consume is drastically lowered to produce that rapid weight loss result. Okay. So that's kind of just a very quick introduction to what's happening and how they're being used and how the mechanisms that are causing the result of the rapid weight loss. That's okay. Let's assume that's all well and good. Here are the problems that I do not think are being spoken about enough. And as a person who focuses on natural, sustainable weight loss and lifestyle change, what I'm seeing happen in real time, and I'm also seeing is going to be a wave of issues that are going to come in the future. So the first thing that I think is a major concern is the impact of lean mass loss, right? And what I mean by lean mass loss is most of the time when people are taking these medications, their goal is to lose body fat and to improve their blood sugar regulation and other internal blood markers and things like that. A1C, insulin sensitivity, cholesterol numbers improving, all that stuff, right? And so, but there's a difference between fat mass loss and lean mass loss. Lean mass loss is when we're talking about loss of muscle tissue and other lean masses in the body, bone and muscle predominantly, and muscle being the biggest one. And so we have to understand that when it comes to a person's metabolism, their muscle tissue, the muscle tissue that they have on their body, is the most metabolically active tissue that we have, meaning that your muscle tissue is burning the majority of your calories every day. Just sitting at rest, not even doing any exercise, doing any activity, all of the muscular tissue that you have in your body is burning calories, right? Our brain activity actually burns a decent amount of calories as well, but a lot of it is the muscle tissue that we have in our body. So that makes up the bulk of our actual metabolism. And when we have a mechanism like this, where all of a sudden there is a drastic decrease in appetite through appetite suppression, squashing the appetite, and a drastic and sudden decrease in the volume of food that a person is eating, we do naturally get into oftentimes an extreme calorie deficit that is resulting in consistent weight loss. But one of the main problems here is that not only are we reducing calories drastically, but we're reducing the amount of protein that a person is eating at the same time. And I would say more often than not, we're doing this also at the same time without doing consistent and effective and properly executed strength training, right? And so what happens in the process or in the environment of this sudden drop in calories, which a sudden drop in calories and achieving a really nice calorie deficit is a good thing, but doing that very quickly without maintaining a proper intake of protein and pairing that with consistent and properly executed strength training, what happens is we lose a lot of muscle mass in this process. And in other words, assuming that you're losing somewhere between 2 and 4 pounds, sometimes higher is what I'm seeing, per week. The percentage of that weight lost every week in this environment where we're not getting enough protein, we're in a deep calorie deficit, and we're not strength training, now we have a much higher percentage of that 2 to 4 pounds lost per week coming from your muscle tissue, okay? And while it's very easy to put on body fat, it is very difficult to build muscle mass. very, very difficult to build muscle mass, and it takes a long time of doing the right things consistently to build muscle mass. But as we all know, it's very easy to put on fat mass, right? So what's happening in this situation, and what we're watching happening in real time with a lot of people, is that they are losing a massive amount of weight very quickly without proper protein intake and without strength training, and they're losing a massive amount of their muscle mass, which is going to be very hard to recover. And as they're losing that muscle mass, they are losing their metabolism. Their metabolism, with every pound of muscle that is lost on their body, their ability to burn calories is going down, 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 down. Now, this is going to result in a few very bad things in the long run. Number one, when folks get to a place where they feel like they don't want to lose any more weight and they want to stop losing weight and go into maintenance, the way they look and feel at that end goal weight is going to be a far cry from what they envisioned in their brain. They probably envisioned, I want to be, strong and flexible and functional and energetic, and I want to be trim and lean. And they have these things that they want in their brain as far as how they want to look and feel and function when they get to all this weight off. But they've lost all this muscle mass, and what they end up with oftentimes is a situation where we have lost a lot of our tone in our muscle, and now we just have a lot of loose skin. We end up in sort of this lighter but still feel like we're overweight or skinny fat, a number of these different things, and we're not super happy with actually the end result, and that can be devastating, right? The other thing, which I think is actually the bigger problem, is that we end up in a situation where through this process of rapid weight loss without adequate protein intake and strength training, we now end up in a very unfortunate situation where the metabolism is far lower than it used to be. And what that means is that on a daily basis, any particular individual is going to be burning far less calories than they used to be, or than they could have been if they had retained all of that muscle mass. And when you burn less calories on a daily basis, that means you are restricted in how much food, that you're going to be able to eat to maintain weight. Okay. So if I have an individual who loses this weight by strength training and getting an adequate protein intake, whether they're on medication or not, and they retain all of that muscle mass through the process, and the weight, the vast majority, if not all of the weight that they lost was truly body fat, then they maintained a very strong metabolism. And because they have a strong metabolism, they're going to be able to eat more food to maintain that weight than if they lost all that muscle mass, and now they can eat a much smaller amount of food in order to maintain. And that makes transitioning into maintenance potentially very difficult. Okay. So that is just the first really big concern that I have, is the amount of lean mass being lost in a very quick fashion, the damage to metabolism, and the end result not being great in what people envisioned it would be, and how difficult that will make maintenance for a lot of people. Okay. So the second thing that I think is a really big concern that is not really talked about very much is that it seems like what we're seeing is that there is a decrease in dosage effectiveness over time, meaning that it's not like you start taking these medications and dose up, and then you find a dose that works, and then you're just good, and you just continue taking that dose, and the benefits remain consistent indefinitely. What seems to be happening is that over time, your body, as it does to many things, develops some tolerance, and the benefits over time at a given dose diminish. And you either have to increase the dosage over time to compensate for that, or accept decreased benefits at a given dose. And so if this remains true, what that essentially means is that you have a very somewhat limited time frame in which you are going to enjoy the benefits of these medications when it comes to appetite suppression and gastric emptying, slowing your gastric emptying and limiting the amount of the volume of food that you can produce or that you can eat. And so what that means is there's sort of a deadline for a lot of people when it comes to starting these. And if we're utilizing these without effective lifestyle change, strength training, adequate protein intake, all that stuff, and we're incurring a huge lean mass loss in this process, and we're up against a little bit of a clock where eventually the diminishing returns of utilizing this will dictate that you will potentially need to come off of it, either because of the cost or just diminishing returns, then when you come off of this medication, we're potentially left with a very difficult situation where now you have lost a lot of muscle mass, a lot of decrease in your overall metabolism, and now all of the benefits of decreased appetite and slow gastric emptying and the things that were allowing you to manage food intake are going away. And what comes oftentimes rushing back, and that is old habits. The food volume increases, all the benefits go away, and now we potentially experience a rapid regain and a rapid weight correction. But oftentimes likely to be that you will gain the weight back and more than you had before because your metabolism has taken such a hit. Okay. These are the two biggest issues that I see. Okay. And all of that happens because of the third issue here that I see. And that is that we're seeing a lot of folks utilize these medications without pairing them with root cause lifestyle change measures. And so, like, what do I mean by root cause lifestyle change measures? Well, what I mean by that is, what are the things that caused an individual to gain weight in the first place? For most, they were over-consuming food, over-consuming a poorly balanced diet, meaning high carbohydrate, high fat, low protein, low fiber, low nutrient for most people. And they simply weren't being active, strength training, being active on a daily basis, burning very much from a calorie standpoint. And that's what created the issue in the first place. And so it stands to reason, if we know that we're going to potentially have to come off of these medications at some point in time anyway, we have to fix those issues. We have to fix the nutritional, dietary food intake issue, and we have to fix the daily activity and the strength training issue. We have to build up a lifestyle that now supports maintaining or continuing to lose weight or maintaining at a weight without the use of the medication. And that's a very complex thing, right? We have to do nutrition education, and we have to teach someone how to actually build a relationship with food and a lifestyle around food that is enjoyable and convenient and achievable consistently for the rest of their lives, that produces the result that they want. We have to help them to put in place consistent habits of daily activity to increase daily activity and calorie burn naturally. We have to get them strength training consistently to build and maintain strength and muscle mass and bone density. We have to make a part of all this, making sure that they're hitting the right amount of protein intake consistently on a daily basis. And probably more important than any of that, we have got to do deep work with a lot of folks on their mental and their emotional health issues. because for vast majority of people who are struggling with weight gain and type 2 diabetes is a reality of truth, is that there is a mental and an emotional relationship or connection with their food. Eating for comfort, eating to feel safe, eating to soothe discomfort, eating to help with stress, all of those different things. And if we don't educate, build up a sustainable lifestyle that is enjoyable and convenient, we don't get a person being sustainably active in strength training, we don't have adequate protein intake built into their lifestyle, and we don't do that deeper work on their mental and emotional health, then when that medication goes away, all of those issues are still there waiting, and they will drag that person back to where they were and then some because of that decrease in metabolism. That's the big concern and the big risk that I'm seeing. And I'm already starting to see this happen in real time with some of the folks who have utilized this process and been early adopters. And as this has really ramped up and is still ramping up, as I'm seeing, my fear is that in 6, 12, 18, 24 months, we're going to see a rapid ramp up of folks who are realizing all of these risks coming to reality for them. And so what do we do about it? Well, I want to wrap this episode up with some last words and some recommendations, okay? Because like I said, I am not against the use of any of these medications if used responsibly. Now, there are some folks in the functional medicine world who are using these in what I feel like is a much more responsible way. They're using them at what they call true microdosage levels, meaning fractions of the incredibly high dosages that are being utilized in the industry right now. And they're really microdosing and very low and slow, taking a low and slow approach to bring up to a appetite control level versus an appetite squashing level. And these dosages that are just like taking our natural mechanisms and the way our bodies work and just manipulating them to potentially unhealthy levels. And so I think there are individuals out there who are taking a much more responsible approach to how to utilize these. And so I do think that if you are in a situation where you have decided that you do want to explore the use of some of these medications, I would recommend finding a functional medicine or holistic medicine provider who is experienced with microdosing and the low and slow approach to do this. I do not have someone that I can recommend, but I do think that I know they're out there, and I would recommend taking that approach, because the goal is to achieve appetite control versus extreme appetite suppression, right? The goal is to, just like with depression and anxiety, I've always said the goal with using SSRIs and some of these other medications on the market for depression and anxiety is not to completely squash depression and anxiety and get someone in a euphoric state. The goal is to utilize those medications to get someone to a level playing ground where they can function and think rationally enough to do the deep work mentally and emotionally that will eliminate the need for those medications moving forward. And it's very much the same thing here, I think. We want to dose up to a place where we can control the food noise, we can control our appetite, all of those things, and then do the deep work, build the lifestyle, get educated, build a lifestyle of fitness and activity and healthy eating and protein intake, and do the deep work of mental and emotional health, and then dose down is ultimately the goal, right? Now I want to be clear. We have clients every day that we work with on our coaching program who are achieving all of this. I have a client right now in my program who is down 170 pounds. She's not using medications. She's doing this the natural way. All of this is completely achievable in very natural ways without any of this. This is kind of an argument of if you must, then here's the more responsible way to approach it that I would recommend. And that is to find a functional medicine provider who is experienced and knowledgeable with microdosing and take the low and slow approach with the mindset that it is only a short-term way of helping you to have a more stable ground to do the deeper work of building, becoming educated, and doing actual lifestyle change. That is number one. And then number two is just you absolutely must do those things. You absolutely must get an education with nutrition. You absolutely must pair with activity and consistent strength training. You absolutely must pair with adequate daily protein intake. And you absolutely must do the deep work in order for this to be successful in the long term. And the education piece is potentially the most complex because human life is complex. We eat at home, we eat alone, we eat with other people, we eat outside of the home, alone and with other people. We have holidays, we have vacations, we have other special occasions. Life is dynamic and it is complex, and a person must become knowledgeable and skilled to navigate all of those nuances and all of those nuanced situations, particularly with nutrition. And so the education piece is potentially most important there. So I hope that this has given a little bit more of a nuanced perspective from someone who is not like amply for or against any of these medications, but would like to see a focus on a more balanced focus on how they should be used, if they're going to be used, understanding the real long-term risks and what needs to happen to mitigate those, and understanding that none of this will matter in the long term. None of the weight that one loses in the long term with these medications will matter if you don't pair it with root cause lifestyle change measures that I mentioned here, because ultimately those issues will still be there, and the weight regain will happen due to the metabolic damage and potentially then some. And I just want to help people avoid that. So hopefully this has been helpful. If anybody, has any questions, feel free to reach out, drop comments, all that good stuff. But hopefully this has given a more nuanced approach. And that's it for today. If you liked this, if this was helpful for you, feel free to subscribe or follow whatever platform that you are on. And I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.